Hello and welcome to episode 16 of ZenMadman's Nutty Pot Limit Omaha journey, wherein we journey into the depths of Pot Limit Omaha and, try and figure it out. Try and play a little better each day. So I've been fairly pleased with my progress thus far. Not so much in being able to actually speak clearly and not have my mouth feel like it's turning to mush, but in terms of just having a better idea of what I want to be doing in different situations. Of course, there's still a long way to go. There's always lots to improve on, but I still think I feel kind of more of a late beginner in terms of really wrapping my mind around how to approach the game. Whereas in terms of like poker theory, I would say I'm a lot further along. But in terms of like really understanding this exact game, where I'm going to fold here, having the third card of the suit is unfortunate. Pair of fours is nice, and the connectors, but I think not quite nice enough. That is one that I'll just look up at the end of the session, because I'm not 100% certain. I think it looks nicer than it is, but if it's as nice as it looks, then maybe I shouldn't have folded. Thank you to Bender Hover Poker. Looks like there might be some wordplay at play there, but thank you for the follow. I'm at 41 followers now, so 9 away from the magical number wherein I can become a Twitch affiliate. Yay! So if you haven't already, if you're watching, please give a follow. It is greatly appreciated. It's free. It's not a Twitch subscription. Whereas YouTube subscriptions are free, and then they've got some other thing that's not free. All right, this I believe, the king with the connectors and the double suited, and it's the good double suited, right? It suits the king and suits the 9. I think I can open raise this. But on this board, I'm just going to check it back. Tons of flushes people can have. They can also have an ace. I might be able to get some folds, and my range certainly will contain more ace-ace than my opponent's, and I might have more things like king-high flush draws. I'm not sure. But I am going to hit the reload, and almost misclick call, but I fold. Because this isn't very good. It's not a hand to be playing in this situation. And neither is this. Also, my opponents are both kind of loose passive. In terms of my flop betting range, I'm not sure how much that's going to affect it. They might have, they're going to have a lot of stuff. And I think suited hands are some of the first hands that people add that maybe they shouldn't. So I think they're going to flop a lot of flushes. Also a lot of ace-x. So I think that other board was probably going to be fairly favorable to them. All right, this player is doing a lot of limping. The other player has seen every flop so far, player 3 across from me. So I'm going to dub this a good table thus far. And bottom pair, gut shot, no flush draw. I think take a free card. Now I have a second gut shot. I could take a stab. If my blocker were better than a 3 of diamonds, and if I weren't in a 4-way pot against 2 loose passive players, I'd be a little more apt to take a stab here. I think I could value bet, like if the 3 were a king. Of course, then I'd have ace, king, queen, 4, and I might have raised pre-flop. But even with my 2 gut shots, there's a flush draw out there. One of the gut shots is not to the nuts. I'm out of position, facing a full pot bet. This is not really where I want to be piling in chips. I mean, I could hit an ace or a queen, and those might also potentially be outs. But my opponent wanting to put the full pot bet in, I find a bit of a warning sign. And also, it's just quite a poor price, right? Oh, I did not get water for myself. Rookie move. My morning routine was harshly disrupted by having to do a thing for a person who hopefully is watching now and knows that I am joking. And I mean, it was like very slightly tweaked, but I got everything done that I needed to get done, and I had time to get water for myself, but I just forgot. So that's on me. All right, Ace Jack 10 10. I think this is sort of the cold calling kind of hand. If I had a second suit, I believe I would want to be three betting this, or I would think about three betting it. I think, four Broadway cards are just very often going to be a hand that we can call here. I flop top pair, not top kicker. I have a flush draw. It's not to the nuts, but I am in position heads up. So I think given that, I can continue. And now that they check, I think like ace probably isn't what they have. I have top two. I'm gonna go ahead and pot it. And if I, oh, that's not good. That is not good. Now I think top set is definitely what they have. Not definitely, but very likely. I got played. I still have top two, and I have a flush draw, so I'm sometimes going to be good here. Like I'm not good 0%. In terms of having the best hand. Maybe I should take in the free card. That's too late. The tens aren't going to do much for me if I'm beat, unless they have like 5-4. If they do have the straight, which is also possible, I've got some decent equity. And I feel like, am I good a non-zero amount of the time here? Or when they check raise, am I just always losing? All right, let's think about the price. We are getting slightly better than 2-1. At 2-1, I need 33% equity. With a flush draw, I clearly don't have 33% equity. I think I just have to fold. I think I just don't have the equity, and I'm not going to have the best hand often enough. I felt very confident when they checked, but when they check raise, that's kind of a disaster scenario. And I don't even have... If I had a gut shot to go with my flush draw, I would say I'd probably call it off there. It really feels uncomfortable giving up potentially that much equity, but I will put that hand review, and I will also mark it curious to see what they had, and I will note also that the pre-flop decision was a question. Am I giving them credit for too much ace-ace when they're kind of a loose wild player? Maybe. But if they're a loose wild player, like maybe they have 2-3. I don't know. Like that also seems possible. Loose players, when they put in tons of money, it doesn't mean that they necessarily still have a wide range. They can, and we want to pay attention to how they play post-flop. Well, that was not a very fun board for the aces, which lost repeatedly, right? They lost to the flush, and they lost to the set, and they almost lost to a straight as well. Okay, so this, I believe, is a slam dunk open from this from this position. I think I'm also going to open it from this position, the hijack where this player limped, which is certainly something that if I'm going to open it from there, then I would ISO against a limper. I think I want to go 60% pot because it's a very wet board. I've got tons of equity, right? Against even like top set, I might be a favorite. I've got open-ended straight draw. I think I have some kind of backdoor lower straight draw. I believe this is going to be an open from this spot with a suited ace and a couple cards connected to the 10. The 10 connects to the ace. But yeah, that last board, I just have so much equity. Out of position, I think this might be a hand I fold. Being single suited. Not totally certain, but I am going to let it go. I'm not going to try and get in any kind of grudge match against this player. Ace 8, 4, 3. This is a fairly trashy hand. Not suited to the ace, single suited, but not in a really good way. Again, we'll double check on that other hand we just played. Let me make sure I have the matrix for later. Yep, okay. Going back to the Twitch chat. I'll just type a quick message. Okay. I will fold this because it is, pretty trashy. And I believe this was an actual open limp, so we'll make note of that. But yeah, when loose players put in very large amounts of money, I don't think we want to think too much about, their range being so wide, like in terms of assuming that they're going to put tons of money in with a wide range, right? That wideness of the range lets us know that there's certain things that they can have that we might not otherwise expect a player to have. But we really want to separate in our mind, how does someone play pre-flop from how do they play post-flop? I mean, they're connected, of course, but I think it's important to draw a distinction. And like not assume because one thing's one way, the other will necessarily follow. Now, seeing 82-36, I would think this player's more likely to be extra aggro post flop, but that's not necessarily true. And I immediately regret not having water. Ace 10 9 7, clear open in my view from the cutoff. If there's a limper, I will raise. If there's a raiser, I believe I'll fold. Yeah, so I'll raise this person, and we're gonna have a stack to pot ratio that's gonna be fairly shallow. So if I flop anything good, I'm just gonna go with it. I think that's something to like prepare ourselves for pre-flop, right? Kind of have an expectation of like, okay, how much do I need to flop to? I mean, this isn't flopping anything. This is flopping like a lot, right? So if I bet this much, then I can jam all turns, right? Give or take, more or less. I could bet a little larger also would be fine. If someone jams here, snap call. I have the nut flush draw. Yes, I have a blocker to my own flush. And the king that's just the absolute total stone cold worst card in the deck. Do I want to jam anyway? I don't think so. I'm thinking about it, but I feel like that's just sometimes, we have a very clear plan and then something unexpected happens. Like literally one of the only very, very bad cards, right? A king, there were 3 kings in the deck and none of them were a diamond. So they're all going to be very bad cards. If this player jams, what are we looking at? An ace or a 7, 4 outs, and a number of diamonds. The king of diamonds already out there. So even though I have a flush draw and 2 pair on a board where my opponent can have trips, and now I'm actually just going to bet. And if they have the boat, they have the boat. The thing is, we're not deep, so I don't really have to worry the same way about it costing me a lot. Okay, and they turned the nuts basically, and they were ahead on the flop anyway. So the turn potentially could have helped me in terms of just giving me a chance to get away from my hand. And then this I will raise on the button against a limper. But yeah, I think there was a potential to get away from my hand because the turn was so bad, but because stacks were shallow, and they hadn't really shown any aggression on the flop. It's a little surprising they didn't want to just jam the flop. Actually, see, yeah, on the flop they had 57%. I had 43%. I would have been happy to get it in there. And then on the turn I had 0, which is not so fun. I have a gut shot, 2 backdoor flush draws. So I'm going to go ahead and half pot it. I'm blocking a lot of the straight draws that somebody can have. Someone can have like a queen, queen 7, all the sets. I would rather have a pair here to make this bet. However, given the fact that my opponent had just check call, they just flatted last hand with top 2 pair, I feel like they're less likely to check raise me, and so I'm going to be able to get a free river card a lot of the time, which is what's going to happen here. The 4 is fairly poor. If it was a 6, I might bet again. I am double blocking the straight, which is nice, but I don't think I'm going to just try and move this player off of, like a queen, or they've also got a lot more of these way stronger value hands like queen 7 or queen even, 3-3 than they like should. And again, I don't see that much reason to bluff here. Yeah, so like they had aces. Like, what? Okay, that's cool. So, flats and plays passive with ace-ace. Flats flop when short with ace-king top 2. So we've got a little bit of a read on that player, and I should top off my stack. Where they clearly are not putting in a lot of aggression. They're not putting in aggression quickly. Um, it's interesting when they had the ace king and they turned the boat that they made that smaller bet size. I had been thinking of jamming, like open jamming myself anyway. Check fold might have been the play, and if they just jammed, maybe I fold. I'm not sure, but their bet was kind of a sort of come hither, like let's just get a little bit of stack in at a time. And when you have the nuts and there's not really any chance of losing the nuts, I mean, it wasn't literally the nuts. I could have had ace ace. And king king would have been possible in the first place. And we have our first spam of the day. Let's see. There we go. Okay. And do I maximize this and then that's how I can get out of that? Oh, there's an X. Yeah, I have my window too small to like use the X out of the thing. All right. Yeah. But yeah, when you have the nuts and there's like not really any chance of somebody outdrawing, or the effective nuts or close to the nuts, you can make those smaller bets and get someone kind of involved, strung along. I think that was very effective by them. I probably do fold for a jam. That's interesting. So then I probably should fold for the smaller bet. But the thing is, then you can use that smaller bet as a bluff, right? They can just have a bear king, king, queen, jack, 10 or something, some kind of straight draw to go with it. Jacks with a 9 and the 6, pretty decent. I think it's not quite there. I think this is just a little too weak. So I'm going to put this one in the muck, and I will mark this for review of a pre-flop decision. And let's follow the hand. So there's been an open limp and then 2 overlimps. The small blind also overlimped. So interesting board for a hand like jacks, but we're not in there. We know nobody else flopped top set. Middle set's unlikely. Flush draws. If somebody has a small flush, this is the sort of situation where basically you're just going to check it down and hope you win. Maybe on the river you put a small bet out there. If you have the ace of suit, I think usually you want to just start betting, whether you have the nuts or the nut flush blocker. When you have the nuts, it's like, hey, if you've got a set or 2 pair, or you just don't believe me and have a smaller flush, let's go. You can't expect people to bet a whole bunch of smaller flushes in this scenario. And then with the nut blocker, you could just go bet, and like dare someone to call you down, basically. So what's this person potting that they didn't want to bet on the flop? Well, this person we know has a proclivity to not play their strong hands very aggressively early on. So I think there's a reasonable chance that they actually had quite a good hand. Ace 10, 8, 3, I think is close, but 2 factors. One, a 3 is a fairly poor card, so I don't want to open too many hands with the 3 up front. And number 2, I'm suited to the ace and the 8, not the ace and the 10. So the ace 10 are suited and the 3-8 is suited. And if instead I had like ace 3 of suit and 10-8 of suit, that might make the difference, where then I would open raise this hand. So good suit versus bad suit. And I'll mark this though for pre-flop because I think it was close-ish. I think it was close, and maybe I'm supposed to play it, and maybe it was a good fold. I'm not sure. But this is that part where when we have an ace, there's one Broadway card, one middle card, and one low card. And a lot of those, except for the best ones of those, we're going to fold a lot of those in the low jack, right? In the early position. All right, ace 10, 9, 6. This is significantly better than the last hand we had. In terms of structure, it's not as good because it's not double suited. And as a result, okay, this is interesting though. If we have a good chance of getting a big multi-way pot, I think having the nut suit has a lot of value. I think my connectors have a good amount of value, and I am going to call. If I make some kind of pair stuff, I'm probably going to do a lot of folding. But given the fact that I saw that person behind me do a lot of they like flatted with aces even, I'm not that worried about them limp re-raising, so I felt almost like I was closing the action. Now in this hand, I have the nut flush draw, a gut shot to the nuts, and if I hit that gut shot, I'll have a redraw to bigger nuts. I like my hand a lot. I would definitely rather have a pair, but I think this is a scenario where I can just get my chips in. I don't really want to play future streets out of position. So I think I just put the chips in, and I'm probably going to be, I might be up against a set. I could be up against, definitely some bigger pairs, but I think this is, I've just got tons of equity, right? Because I have the nut flush draw, and I have a gut shot to go with it. And having that gut shot to go with it really helps. Having a pair would be a little bonus. Wow. So I feel like I'm going to miss my flush draw because maybe everybody has a flush draw. We'll find out. And when you put your chips in a spot like this, I think it's important to realize, like, you're usually going to lose, right? If you're going to get this four-way all-in, three-way, four-way all-in, like, you're usually going to lose. I think the player on my left has a set pretty often. My straight beam to the nuts is very important because I think a non-nut straight is not that likely to win this hand. Wow. Oh, just give me a pair. Oh, that sucks. So my equity on the flop there then was 45%. And that's less than 50. And heads up, that wouldn't be great. But there was another $80 in the pot, basically, on top of... No, there's 100 plus the money that I'm putting in heads up against that player, right? So it ended up being a very good situation in terms of getting the money in. And we'll... do I want to overlimp this? I think I can overlimp it. I'm so short. So I didn't rebuy fast enough, which another rookie move. Little off today. Little off. All right, I'm not doing that. We're just gonna top off, and let's look at the last hand. So the other player had bottom two pair, and then they had 3 flush cards. And so having 3 flush cards turned out to be very good for them because they were blocking 3 of my outs, right? The flush didn't do anything for them. And if somebody else had like a set, they'd basically be drawing stone cold dead on the flop. So they certainly could have folded there. But that's another reason that you can see, like, if I had a pair to go with it, if I had a 7 or a 5, I actually would have won the hand when the 7 paired. I think, right? They didn't make a straight or anything. Yeah, no, they didn't. They made 3 pair. So if I had hit an ace, a 9, a 10, or a 6 on the turn, on the river, because the turn had counterfeited their 2 pair. So I had pretty good equity on the turn there. But yeah, it's just a spot where when I realize that I have very strong equity, I'm just going to go with it because I have the opportunity to get it all in. And then that totally negates my positional disadvantage, right? It's irrelevant at that point that I'm out of position because just all the money's in. And I think I was kind of able to use my positional disadvantage a little bit as an advantage, as this player, player number 2, decides to just full pot it. Player 3 decided to call that pot, and then I'm able to just put all the chips in and not really worry about, just hope it runs out good. But if it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's fine. And if my opponent hadn't actually had the flush draw to go with it, or hadn't had the third heart with their hand, I think we would have been flipping, or I might have even been a favorite against their 2 pair. We can look at that later. Did I mark the hand? I feel like I should mark that hand. I didn't. I'll just mark it for review. All right, so not totally sure what's going on here. It seems like 2 players fairly interested in the pot. All the draws have bricked, and 2 pair and sets have made boats. I wouldn't be surprised to see a jam here, although if this player had a hand like Queen, Queen, or 6-6, they might feel a little bit shyer about it. Odd that they didn't jam, they just bet half pot. I mean, because a jam is only like 5/8 pot, so, that's a choice. Feels like the sort of choice that might be a bluff more often than it would be value, but it's just a bit of an odd play. No, it was the nuts. Not sure why they didn't just jam with the nuts. Let's take a look at what the other player had. 6-6 from the out of position player. Yeah, so it was top 2 and a flush draw against bottom set on the flop. So that bottom set can be trouble, although they they got it in pretty good on the earlier streets. Do I want to raise this? Nines with a king and a 3. I'm not sure. This player's very loose. Everybody being so loose makes me feel like I don't want the most marginal hands. I think, I need to lean towards hands that are going to be a little bit better multi-way, because just a lot of the pots are going to be multi-way. And I'll tag this hand as well for pre-flop, and we'll double check it at the end of the session. All right, King, Queen, 6-3. The 6 and the 3 aren't very good cards. I am going to fold. And being suited to a king and a queen, and having those king, queen, 2 good cards that connect is nice. And this might be close. I'm going to use this as another hand to kind of try to use to calibrate, right? To calibrate off of this. Like, it's not the 2 worst side cards, right? It's not like King, Queen, Deuce 3 or 3 Deuce, but King, Queen, 3, 6, pretty bad side cards. If it was like King, Queen, 6, 5, I think I would have raised. And again, a hand like that would play a little bit better multi-way. This would be a pretty good flop for me, but not, not really robust equity. Just like I'm probably ahead right now equity. And, so far, things have been a little bit rough. I'm going to fold. I had that hand where I got check raised all in on the turn. I ended up folding, which I feel like I played the hand reasonably, but I'll look at that again. And then, I had the hand where I'm pretty happy with getting it in the spot that I did, but, didn't win, which is disappointing. But like, as I was saying, we need to have the expectation that we're going to lose that hand more often than not, or as often than not, but we're getting a good price, right? We're just getting the chips in good. And so that's PLO. And sometimes you feel it a little bit, sometimes you don't. And I think when there's a little bit of anxiety, it's important, for me anyway, to recognize that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that was a little stressful, and like maybe I'm a little displeased, but like now I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm fine, I'm good. And if you feel like it's really getting to you, sometimes it's a good time to take a break. Sometimes maybe the way to go is to try to see like, okay, can I kind of rein it in? Can I try to play 5 or 10 hands level-headed, and maybe just like focus on some breathing, or focus on like, for me, it's like, yeah, I'll look at the hand later. It's fine. This is a nice hand to get a free flop with. Not the best free flop, but we'll be happy to take another free card. But yeah, just kind of coming back to the present. And then if you find that you're unable to do that in the moment, I definitely recommend, taking a break, and then sometimes just stopping a session, depending on how you are. But I've never had like really huge tilt issues that I can think of. I've certainly gotten frustrated and had significant emotional reactions at times, but not so much in the way of feeling like it really threw my play way off, right? It can certainly, it affects different people different ways. And I think just being honest with ourselves and realistic about, if you find that your play is not particularly affected, like some people just start playing tons more hands. I don't tend to play tons more hands. I might have a little decreased clarity in tougher moments, or in big pots if I've been, emotionally agitated. But if you do find that you start playing way more hands, then that's definitely something to try to work on, and, to try to step back from. But yeah, things just affect different people different ways. And sometimes in poker, if your goal is to like play a lot of poker and have, strong long-term results, we can't just run away from the emotional discomfort, right? We have to accept that that's part of the game. There's no getting away from it. 4-4-3 deuce rainbow seems fairly tragic for a pocket pair with connected side cards. We will mark this person as green as well. But yeah, so there has to be some way of kind of trying to like battle through that and fight through it. But you know, how each person does that, I think it's gonna be different for each person. So you know, you have to understand yourself and try to seek to understand yourself. And you know, for me, it's like it would be easy to be like, oh, I had a bad beat, I should quit the session. But like, it probably wouldn't be the right thing to do because it's probably not affecting my game to a level where like now all of a sudden if I was a winning player, I'm a losing player, or if I was a, you know, um break even, yeah, whatever. Like I don't think it has a big effect. I am going on a long tangent about it though. So let's focus back up on the action going on here. A lot of straights possible, right? Ace king, king nine, nine eight. I find it helpful and I think important to instead of just saying things like there are a lot of straights out there or like there are this or that. Be specific, right? Always specificity. It helps, you know, the difference between a queen on the turn and an ace on the turn. A queen on the turn, ace king, king nine, nine eight, those all make straights. An ace on the turn, king queen makes a straight. So that's 3 times as many straights on this with 3 cards in a row compared to having you know, the double gap where you need the exact 2 cards to make the straight. So that's a big difference. And like if the river were a 7 compared to if the river were a 9, right? If the river's a 7, well, that didn't actually change anything, right? But if the river's a 9, now all of a sudden, king queen, king 10, king jack, king 9, 9, 10 9, 8 7. You know, there's 10 8. There's like tons, right? And if you start to kind of try to rattle them off in your mind, I think you will find that sometimes you rhyme without putting in the time. Yeah, okay. Enough of that. This one I'll tag this one for pre-flop as well. I believe I would probably open the cutoff with this, but with a limper, I'm not going to try to ISO with it. If it was suited to the jack and the king as opposed to the king and the 5, I would like it a lot better. Yeah. I would like it a lot better. All right, so this table, it's also important to realize like, hey, you know, this table is fantastic, right? So let's say I have an A game, and let's say I started the session playing the A game or my A minus game, and then I felt like, oh, I took a beat or just like made a mistake or just felt off, and I felt like now I'm playing my B game. In a game like this, I feel like I could play my B game and still be making significant money in a game like this. Whereas if it was a tougher game and that was the only game I had available, now my B game is like, I don't know, right? Maybe that's a game I need to be on my A game. Maybe as, you know, I get better, maybe I feel like, oh, my C game's good for this. You know, my C game's maybe good for a tougher game. You know, basically, you're not always going to play your best. I think it's important to always try to play our best, right? But that doesn't mean that's what's always going to happen. Aces with a suit, I flop. I have the nut flush blocker, right? So nobody can have the nut flush draw. I have a gutter, which would be to the nuts, right? If a 3 comes, I would have the nuts with 5-2. Very important, I think, to state that like, yeah, that would actually be the nuts. And then here, now somebody's leading out, so I feel like it's very likely I've got a set over set situation here. Yes, they could have some kind of straight flush combo draw, but my hand's going to have very, very good equity here. I mean, I have the nuts, and then I have some extra equity, and they can have some kind of combo draw. I'm hoping that they don't. They do. I turn the nuts, and then they make the nutter nuts, which is straight flush, and I need to rebuy quickly. Okay. And they didn't deal me in. So if we look at that hand, that wasn't the hand I wanted to be up against. I had 64% equity. They had 36% equity. So I'm fine being up against that hand, right? I get it in very good on the flop. But if they had a hand like 8-8, they'd have like, what, 5% equity? 10%? 5%? 10%? What, 2 outs twice? I guess that's closer to 10%, 8, 9%. But yeah, I could possibly have them just like smashed. And instead, I just had them like in bad shape, right? They had, what did they have? They had king 10, 7, 6. and the 7, 6, 10 were diamonds, right? So they had 3 diamonds. I had 1 diamond, so that really hurt their equity. And they had the gut shot, which would have been good. And yeah, they could have hit any 5 would have been good. But again, I had one of the 5s, so that's why their equity wasn't as good as it could have been with this, gut shot straight flush draw. They ended up making the actual straight flush, which is barrels of laughs. But that's fine. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes it rains. But yeah, all we can do is try and get it in good, right? So those types of situations too, like when you see they have the flush draw, I think the immediate thing that needs to happen in the brain is like, oh, okay, I got it in good, cool, I feel good about how I played this hand, although, we can always go look at it later. I don't think there's too much to, I guess I tagged it for review, but I don't think there's too much more to say about it. But like, as soon as you see what they have, it's like, okay, there's a reasonable chance I'm going to lose this hand, right? There's a lot of cards that can come, and to just like immediately sort of like make peace with that to the best of our ability, right? Which isn't always easy. Sometimes it's hard. This is definitely the worst session I've had on stream so far. And in terms of a one tabling session for like 35 minutes, 36 minutes, it's, you run into some hands, and sometimes you get it in good and they get there, and sometimes you get it in bad and you get there, right? I mean, I set under set someone the other day, or they set over set me, and I don't think I should have gotten it in that spot. I might make a video of that specific hand. It was off stream, but I had a backdoor flush draw and I hit my backdoor flush, and it's like, yeah, you have equity when you have equity, right? People hit the 1-outer too when it's set under set and there's no backdoors. Like, I've seen that plenty of times. I've been on both ends of it, I suppose. Mostly I've been on the wrong end of it, because I more often will have the overset. But curious to see the player across from me. Their stats have gotten way tighter. Like, they were playing very loose early on. That's curious. What the heck? Like, if we look at the hands they played, they probably played like 5 or 6. Like, I think they played like the first 5 hands, or 4 out of the first 5 hands or something. And then they've played very few hands from there. They have been limping as well. So, sometimes it's just moody. Sometimes maybe, they got a double up, or they won a big pot and they're like, okay, I'm going to lock it down. Although here they got a double up and now they're putting a lot of chips in. So, River card is going to see a fair amount of donking here as the nuts have changed, right? Like, all of a sudden the nuts are over here, right? Jack 10. When that player bets out, I feel like they probably have the nuts. From what we've seen from them so far, they've basically put it in when they've had very strong hands. They've played a lot of hands pre-flop. They put it in that one hand with bottom 2 and a really not the best flush draw, but I guess that was different. They were calling. They weren't aggressively putting chips in, right? They weren't aggressing or betting. So that's something to keep an eye on. So I think we have kind of an idea of how that player plays. Now the player across from me is 71-21. I don't understand. What happened? What the heck? Were maybe fewer players were dealt in, and all of a sudden it was like 3-handed stats? I don't know what's up with the HUD. All right, let's scratch everything I was saying about the player across from me and just move along. That was odd. So again, nut changing river, right? I mean, it doesn't look like had anything close to the nuts. There's middle 2 pair on the turn. So, not a big thing there. Ace 7 5 deuce. Like, I have the suited ace. That's nice. And that's about the only thing that's nice. I mean, the other cards kind of connect to some extent because they're all low, bad cards. So, and somehow they missed this 10-3-3 anyway. But yeah, that's the type of hand to just not not think too much of, right? To just clearly see like, yeah, this isn't a very good hand. Okay, so queens got it in there on the flop. What did the other person have? Ace 10. And did they check raise the turn with ace 10? Okay, so now everything we know about them has just, it's just been, where did that, why won't that, I want that thing back. Okay, let's see. Yeah, let's look at this hand. What happened? We have a raise and a call, and then check, check, and then they check raise all in with their ace 10, and that's it. Okay. Interesting. So that runs counter to our read, and sometimes that happens. You know, sometimes you get a sense that somebody is putting in chips when they have a pretty strong hand, and then all of a sudden they do it with not such a strong hand, and you go, oh, maybe my read was off. Or maybe the read was on for how that player was playing at that point. But, you know, when somebody plays about 80% of their hands, they probably don't have this very refined, always playing the same style all the time style. Like maybe now they've just decided to go off. Okay, no, now they made the nuts. So, you know, also it was a sort of shorter stack situation earlier. So with one suit, I'm not going to play this. If I was double suited, I think I would play this double suited. I'm not going to go ahead and look that one up. I'm pretty confident in that. And we'll play about another 5 minutes and then do the session review. I'm going to experiment with the format of having the session be slightly shorter, and then the review will just be as long as it is, right? So sometimes it'll be on the longer side, sometimes not. Jack, Jack with the king. Suited with the 4. I think with these loose players behind me, I'm going to end up with a lot of multi-way pots, and this isn't really a hand that I'm jazzed to get a multi-way pot out of position with. Yes, I can flop trip jacks, but aside from that, there's not that much value to my hand. King Jack can make a straight. That's basically it. The Jack High flush draw, if I'm likely to have a multi-way pot, goes down in value a lot compared to in a heads-up pot, where it might make me want to pot the turn and then fold to a check raise. All right, so we had a bet on this flop in a multi-way pot. Everybody decided to call. Turn, very dynamic turn, right? Jack 9 and 9-6 both made straights. Also brings a potential, you know, puts a flush draw out there. So there's a lot of different rivers. This is a very different river. You know, flush draws just got there. So leading out with the flush makes a lot of sense. I think, you know, nut flush, second nut flush, third nut flush even, as opposed to checking, you know, basically, especially looking at the stack to pot ratio, right? There was very little left in the stacks. And for that reason, I think leading out made all the sense in the world. If you were very deep and you had a smaller flush, I think you'd be less inclined to lead out there, or should be less inclined to lead out. All right, so we have a raise, and we're going to pitch this one. And I will play... Will I play one more orbit? We'll play one more orbit. All right, Ace King 4. In a raised pot, you know, the raiser should have all the ace-ace. They should have king-king. They should have ace-king. A lot of those in their range, whereas the callers shouldn't, but I think they do, right? We've seen that this one player is happy to call with ace-ace and ace-king. So the out-of-position player, I think, can still have a lot of big hands. Now it's just like you have a king or you have a pocket pair or you have nothing. And nobody's put a bet in so far, so I think it's not that likely anybody has a king. I think there's a good chance that this just checks around. The button now could bet a hand like king queens for value. Full potting it is like, really? Really? Okay, I guess having a king and checking back the turn, if you had like king, queen, jack, 9, I mean, you probably... Yeah, I mean, that could be reasonable, but it's a little peculiar, right, taking that line. I'm going to fold this. Whether it gets raised to me or limps or whatever, it's just it's not a very good hand. A lot of hands with a 3 or a 2 we're going to fold, right? Those are mostly fairly bad hands. And yeah, so all right, 10-9-6 is a very, I mean, interesting board for our hand, but you know, Queen Jack, Jack 7, 7 with any of these board cards, and 7-5 are all straights. So that's a ton of straights. So if you don't have a straight, your hand is like pretty bad here, right? Unless you have like 10-10 with spades, and like maybe a jack or something. 10-10 and then like Jack King of spades, I think would be pretty good. But you know, queens are going to take it down. Just because it's you know, super easy for someone to have a straight doesn't mean someone does have a straight, especially when your head's up. And so if you did have, you know, Queen 7-7 or something, that would be, you'd be blocking a lot of straights. You'd be blocking all the straights to some extent, and that would be an interesting spot to maybe turn a hand like queens into a bluff. Maybe get some 2-pair type hands to fold. Maybe even get a set to fold, or kings or aces. King Queen 9, again, we get one of these straight boards. Just Jack 10 is the only straight, right? But there's going to be a lot of gut shots like Ace Jack, Ace 10, and then, you know, 10-8, Jack 8 can also be gut shots, but they're pretty weak gut shots. Nobody bet the flop, so if the in position player had a hand like King Queen, King 9, you know, I think they can start betting, or like Deuce Deuce even, they can start betting for value, where they're like, okay, probably nobody has, yeah, an Ace King, that seems reasonable-ish. The other player called him with a 9 high flush draw, which seems a little loosey-goosey. All right, double suited kings. Is this a 3-bet or is this a flat? I am going to flat this. I'm going to look it up later. I think 3-betting can't be that bad, but if we get 4-bet, what do we do? Is it a call in that spot? Being in position against the 2 players who already put money in the pot, and then having these 2 loose players behind me, I thought pretty good chance of making a nice big multi-way pot, which is what's happened. I have top set, which is currently the nuts. I have the second nut flush draw, and then I have, you know, a couple of kind of irrelevant cards. So how much do I want to bet here? I think let's go with 2/3 pot. I should be able to get all the chips in if it bricks off and my hand ends up being good. If somebody check raises me, I'm just going to, you know, fist pump, get it in, basically. If this player decided to call, then there's going to be some dicey turn cards I'm going to have to navigate, but it's going to be hard to like ever be in a very bad situation with that hand, because I'm always going to have so many outs to improve. All right, so this is the penultimate hand of the session. As always, let me know if there's any hands that we played that you want to review specifically. I've marked a whole bunch of them. And also let me know your opinions on the format in terms of 1 tabling, 3 tabling, doing a slightly shorter session and then a review, or the longer session. I think I'm probably going to stick with a slightly shorter session and review, and then at some point in the not too distant future, I will probably add in like a 3 tabling longer session later in the day, but we'll see about that. I might start that in like a week or 2 or something like that. Kind of try and get a larger volume of hands on stream. Whereas here, mostly, I'm kind of searching for interesting spots, right? Doing what feels to me a little bit like a warm-up session for the day, where I'm forcing myself to talk through every decision, which I highly recommend. I mean, whether you stream or not, even if you're just playing on your own, I think occasionally recording a video for yourself, you can download free recording software like OBS. Single suited, no, the 3 and the 7 are just too bad. I'll mark this, and we'll just look at what similar hands, like what do we need to go with this, the side cards for the Ace King with the suited ace. But yeah, I think, you know, you can download OBS Studio and record yourself. You know, Camtasia has free trials. There's all sorts of things where you can do a screen capture, and if you have a mic, just talk through your session, just make your own video for yourself, and then look back at it and see, you know, how you were thinking, right? See what your thoughts were during the session, and think about what else you would like to think about. You know, are there things you notice playing it back that you didn't say while you were playing, and perhaps you didn't notice while you were playing? I think that can be a very helpful, you know, the kind of videotape review, right? Athletes do that all the time to try to see, like, it's harder to see what we're doing while we're doing it than looking back, see, okay, what did I do? What was my performance like? What can I learn from this? How can I improve going forward? Ace King single suited, and Ace King 7-3, in fact, is a fold. So Ace King 7-3 single suit is a fold with good suit, but Ace King 7-4 single suited is a RFI in LoJack. So it's that simple, right? I looked at this, I thought, this is pretty close. Let me verify that. It's like, yes, it is in fact pretty close. Raise fold with the ace high suit. Open fold bad suits. And that's it, right? So that's what we're going to take away from this was I saw this hand, I thought it's close, then I thought, 3's a pretty bad card. And you know what? It turns out 3's a pretty bad card. If it was 5-3 or 4-3, I would have actually played it, it turns out. But with the 7, the 3, the ace, it doesn't have it going on. Next hand. All right, aces with a 5 and a deuce. We're going to look more at how this hand was played post-flop, right? Pre-flop, I raise, I get 2 callers. Not too much to say there. My opponent leads out, and I have 2 approaches here, right? I could flat, I guess, and then try and stick it in on good turn cards. But when my opponent leads out for pot, it's like saying, hey, I have a hand I want to get it all in with. And I'm like, well, I have a hand I want to get it all in with. I've got aces, right? Top set. And I know you don't have the nut flush draw, so because you don't have the nut flush draw, the range of hands you want to get it all in with is going to be skewed towards 8-8 and 4-4, and maybe ace-8 and ace-4. So those hands, I'm just like, let's go, right? Let's get it in. What if a diamond comes off and then they check and then I check, or what do I do? Or they bet and it's a much worse situation. So here, seeing the pot size bet come at me, it's like, yeah, let's go. And because I have the ace of diamonds, I think they're weighted away from like aces up with a nut flush draw, right? They're going to have fewer flush draws in their range. Doesn't mean they won't have any. If they do have them, they'll probably be these like super wraps, which isn't exactly what they turned out to be having, but it was, you know, it ended up being a very good spot to get it in. They did make a straight flush. People make straight flushes sometimes. There's nothing we can do about it. Any flush would have been good, of course. This would have been a real kick in the nuts if I had like the deuce of diamonds and they had hit this card and it was just like a one-outer, even though actually another 5 would have been good. But yeah, that would have been extra unpleasant. But as it was, you know, it was unpleasant. The session overall felt fairly unpleasant as an experience. But unpleasant experiences aren't always bad. It's like, yeah, I have less money than I had at the beginning of the session, but I have more knowledge. And knowledge is a word that sounds funny when some people pronounce it. Not to make fun of anybody's accents. It's more of there's a certain person who makes certain videos and talks about knowledge and says it a certain way. And then there's a Lamborghini. And okay, moving on. So we look at this. I've got 64% equity on the flop, right? We can put the turn back and say like, oh, what if I waited to get into the turn? Like, would my equity be better? Yeah, my equity would be better. It would be, I don't think it would cut their equity in half. They'd still have like 20 something, or 20, okay. Because the 3 does give them the double gutter, right? Now oh no, the 3 doesn't help at all, right? No. Oh well. But if I go back to this flop and I say like, what if they have a hand like, I guess I want to give them a range, but let's give them the hand that I really don't want them to have. What do we have? We're going to give them hearts. Let's give them hearts, and we'll give them the wrap, right? So they have the wrap, or the inside wrap, and they've got both flush draws. They got the good flush draw and the backdoor flush draw. And I think we're going to be closer to 50-50 here. They might, I don't think they're a favorite, but yeah, we're almost exactly 50-50. So that's like worst case scenario for me. We're 50-50. I guess is there a worser case scenario? They could have like a 2 of hearts and now it's going to be a little worse than 50-50. Yeah. But basically I can't get my money in that bad here. But if they have a hand like, you know, 8 of hearts, 8 of clubs, 8 of hearts, 8 of clubs, you know, 9 of diamonds, 10 of... Actually, even if I give them another diamond, I'm still dominating. right? Because that set just doesn't do much for them. But if I give them like a 10 of hearts, and so they have backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. Now I have 85% equity. So there was a very real chance I was going to get this money in with like 85% equity or something. If we make that a king, I think I'm going to have around 90. Yeah, 91%, right? So the main thing here to me was when they potted it, it weighted their range away from flush draws because I had the ace of diamonds. And so as I'm taking out draws from their range, I'm putting in, there's just gonna be more of the sets left, right? So getting in against set would have been delightful. It would have held up if they didn't have the flush draw, but sometimes we lose. Okay. So not really much in the way of notes to take on that. I think that hand was fairly self-explanatory. Here, we're going to take a look at, would I open this from the button? That was my assertion that King Jack double suited with a 5 and a 3 is a RFI from the button. Correct. Yes, even bad suit. So King Jack 5-3 double suited is RFI from button. So I would raise it in this spot, regardless of good, bad suit. And there's probably a tighter way of saying that. Now I'm going to go back to the cutoff, which is the range I'm going to use when there's a limper, right? And also, it's this big multi-way situation. So now we're going to look at, okay, so King Jack 5-3 double suited is fold from cutoff. So fold versus limper is good. Again, regardless of good, bad suit. But to add a little extra information, King Jack 5-4 double suited, where the 5 and the 4 are connected, is RFI from button and cutoff. However, it's suited. All right. So, learned something there, right? Fold this in this spot, fold it in the cutoff, or raise it from the button, right? Is that what I learned? What did I learn? Yeah, so we raise this from the button, and we raise it, we fold it from the cutoff, and thus when there's a limper, I'm generally going to fold it. Unless there's, I mean, here maybe I could raise it anyway, because my opponents are so generous. But if make the 3 a 4, and then I would play it in the cutoff and here. In this scenario. Okay, so we've learned something. Okay, king, queen, 6 tray, right? This I end up folding. First I want to see in the hijack, do I usually fold it, right? Hijack, king, queen, 6-3 double suited. This is going to be a fold from the hijack, just period, right? So we don't even have to look up the low jack. So king, queen, 6-3 double suited is fold from hijack. King, queen, 6-4 double suited is RFI. And king, queen, what is it? 5-4 double suited are raise first in. All right, so basically the 6 and the 3 are a little too bad to play this hand. And that's kind of what I suspected. And so we folded, yes. Yes, we folded, so good fold. Okay. This one, I think this is probably an error. I think I'm probably supposed to. We'll look at this in the hijack. Double suited 9s with a king and a 3. Maybe not. The 3 is a very bad card. Yeah, this is a fold. This is a fold. So king 9-9-3 double suited is fold from hijack. And then we'll go and just double check in the cutoff. Would I normally open this in the cutoff? I think that's maybe where I am gonna, nope, we still fold it, and cut off. And we'll just say, like, am I gonna RFI this from the button? I think so. I mean, I have to, right? It has to be a raise from the button. It must, it is. RFI from button only, as most 9-9-XX double suited is RFI from button. Only fold 7-2 through 3-2 and 4-3. So those would be the side cards, right? So 9-9-7-2, 9-9-6-2, yada, yada, yada. Cool. Okay, moving on. And one downside of not taking as long and kind of like powering through things is maybe the mental connections formed aren't as solid. I don't know. I feel like I might be going too fast. As always, in the chat, let me know if you feel like I'm going too fast. If I'm just like kind of going boom, 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 boom through the hands. I felt like I was dragging a little in the past. So, still trying to find that calibration, that sweet spot where it's going to be both a useful learning experience and a pleasurable viewing experience or the like, or an educational viewing experience. I aim for edutainment, but sometimes we get there, sometimes we don't. Okay, this hand I think is possibly close against an MP open. I'm not sure about in terms of squeeze versus this kind of scenario, but I think in a situation like this with this many loose players, with a limper who's shown themselves to be very passive, they flatted ace-ace earlier. They flatted ace-king, something in a short-handed spot. I don't think I'm getting back raised here very often, so I think I can call somewhat liberally. What do I want to look up? Big blind squeeze, I guess, versus MP, which is not here. There's versus under the gun, and there's versus cutoff. So first I'll say no, that's button squeeze. That's not what we want. We want big blind squeeze under the gun. Okay, so we'll take a look at this. Ace-10 single suited. It's probably going to be a lot of folds. Yeah, so ace-10, 9, 6 is a fold. Ace-10, 9, 7 would be a call, right? That is against a low jack open. This is not a low jack open. This is against a hijack open. So now I'm going to look at versus cutoff, see do I play this hand if it's the cutoff? And the answer is yes. So basically, this is the data we have. Ace-10. I guess I have caps on. Okay, ace-king, 10, 6, single suited is fold versus low jack squeeze. I feel like that's not the right terminology to say squeeze there, but whatever. Versus low jack RFI plus cold calls is a call versus cutoff RFI plus cold calls. And so in hijack, question mark, we don't know. I think this is okay due to wideness of opponents' ranges. So that's like an opinion, man. That's not a fact there, but that feels okay. And if I go back and I just look at like what do I play big blind versus MP, I think this is going to be a fold, but it's going to be borderline. Nope. Ace-10, 9, 6, single suited, good suit is call versus MP RFI. So I feel good about this hand pre-flop. I think it makes sense. We've double checked everything, and I think I deem it playable in this spot. In terms of having these extra opponents in the board in the hand, I think because I have the nut flush draw and because I have what are going to be some nut straight potential outs and draws and whatever, I think it plays better in this multi-way pot than a hand that had maybe something that looked a little bit more like some showdown value but wasn't going to make the nuts as much, right? Like a king high suit or a 10 high suit is going to lose a lot of value in this big multi-way pot, whereas the ace high suit, I think, is going to allow me to play it very, very strong. And so the flop comes out, and I think, well, I could lead out here. But if I lead out, even if I pot it or whatever I bet, if somebody calls, there are going to be a lot of kind of weird spots on the turn. It doesn't mean I can't lead out. I can. And my lead out range might be something like sets and hands like this. Or, wraps like 6, 7, 8, 9 with hearts. Something like that. But I decided to go for the check raise, and things go well. There's a pot. There's a call of a pot. I know nobody else has bigger hearts, and I know nobody else can have a hand that makes my 6-9 not live, right? Those are all outs to the stone cold nuts. 6-9 could be to a chop. But if I hit the 6-9 straight, then a 6 or a 9 can give me a bigger straight as well. So I really like this flop. I think I have a lot of equity against basically anything, and I just rip it because I'm out of position, and seeing the turn out of position, my equity can drop a lot. Here I can get it in with really good equity on the flop. Maybe they even fold. If this other player hadn't cold called for 65, they didn't even have the full bet. If they hadn't cold called, then maybe these other players fold and I just take it down without a turn, which would have been amazing, right? I would have been stealing all their equity. But I do get called in this one spot, and the first two players fold. So my guess is they might have had some heart draws that were a little lower. This many people being involved can kill some of my outs. That's, I think, a potential risk. And as it turns out, this other person had bottom 2 pair and 3 hearts. I mean, this is how they play, right? Is it a good way to play? Like pre-flop, you probably fold that hand twice, right? On the flop, bottom 2 pair with 3 opponents who seem really excited about putting money in, I would probably just fold it. It turned out they did have better than 50% equity against me. We can launch the equity calculator and just show, obviously on the river, they have 100% equity. Let's look on the turn even. On the turn, I'm actually a favorite. So, because on the turn, now all of a sudden, all of my cards would give me 2 pair that beats them. So, on the flop, I'm a slight dog. On the turn, I'm a slight favorite. But we're basically flipping. But if we go back to the flop action, and we look at what happens here, they call for 66, basically, right? So we each put in 66, which is 44 extra on top of what's already gone in. There's 21, 21, 23, 20, blah, blah, blah. That's over 100 in the middle, and then we each put in 44 on top of that. So having, we don't even need that much equity, right? I'm basically putting in 65 in order to win back, that 65 plus, what is this? Another 120 something. So I'm putting in about 30% of the pot, and so I only need 30% equity. It's very hard not to have that with this hand. As it turned out, I had about 45%. So the money went in good, but it went out bad. So c'est la vie, that happens, and we move backwards in time. Again, this isn't a hand that I'm going to take a bunch of notes with. I already took notes on pre-flop, right? Post-flop is kind of just talking, and I'm not running sims. Hard to run 4-way sims anyway. But I feel comfortable with how I played the hand. All right, so ace-10, 8-3. We just want to do a checkup here. Is this too tight? Is this good? Let's take a look. All right, so this is what position? I'm the low jack or under the gun. Ace-10 double suited with a 3 and an 8. Actually, it turns out that this is a raise. It's towards the bottom of raising range. So ace-10, 8 tray, double suited is RFI, good or bad suit. No matter what, I'm going to be suited to the ace, so the good-bad suit distinction isn't as significant with the double-suited hand here. Being suited to a 10, being suited to 8, not that big a difference. Fold to 3-bet, out of position, call, 3-bet, in position. Okay? Near bottom of range. So, let's say ace, 8 deuce double suited is call, ace 10 7 3 is fold, bad suit. So there we can basically just see, okay, this is on the cusp. Folding it, maybe even in this rake structure is good. Maybe even in this, big multi-way environment is good, where I do have a lot of nuttiness potential, and there isn't a ton of 3-betting. These players have done some. So I think playing it would be fine, but I'm also not broken up about folding it. I don't think it's a huge inaccuracy, and in this rake structure, maybe it's best. All right, jacks. We're going to look at jacks. So single-suited jacks. With the 9 is nice, the 6 is bad. So I've looked it up already, and we have Jack, Jack, 9, 6. I feel like I'm getting a lot better with the matrix, the PLO matrix, is clear fold from low jack. And we'll go back and we'll see what about for the hijack. Since this player is fairly loose, jack, jack, 9-6 single suited, and hijack. So let's just go one more down the chain. Cutoff. What are we doing with the cutoff? Jack, jack, 9-6, and and even in the cutoff. No, we'll say also barely a fold in the cutoff, because at that point we're calling jack, jack, 9-7. If we go to the button range, we'll just play it out, and then this RFI from button along with most jack, jack single suited. Okay, so I think that's clear. Having this 6 is a quite poor card. We don't want to open it from the low jack or the hijack or even the cutoff. We will raise this from the button first in. And we fold, and we move on. All right, so this hand, I think I decided to raise. And then, oh, yes, the post flop was quite curious. I think maybe I made a significant mistake here. But raising small blind, let's take a look. In general, RFI from the small blind, I think this is going to be very clear. Ace 10, 9, 7. Yeah, very clear open raise. Let's look at, like, do I open this from the under the gun just to kind of get a sense for where in the range does it, where does it lie in the range? So this is an RFI even from under the gun. So I think that's useful information, right? That means it's probably in the top like 17, 18% or whatever. Ace 10, 9, 7. Single suited is RFI from low jack. And good suit or bad suit, call, raise, IP with good suit. Right, so basically we don't really want to be calling a 3-bet with this hand out of position. But, so like if I did get 3-bet, I think this maybe would be a fold. Although the scenario is a little different than that low jack, their ranges are maybe going to be a bit different. But as we see, this player does not like to 3-bet very much. So we have call and call. I take a flop. Looks like a monster flop. Like I just smashed it, right? I've got top and bottom pair. I've got some backdoor straight stuff going on. And I have the nut flush draw. So, there's better flops. And there's better hands I can have on this flop. Like I could have a set of aces instead of top and bottom pair. That would be a lot better. Might have turned out a little better. But looking at, there's $12 in the middle. And the stacks are 26 and 29. So the SPR is under 2.5, right? So basically, I could just go pot jam on like all runouts basically, and I think that would be fine. I decided to go half pot, which I think is also fine. In this case, maybe some smaller flush draws are going to come along, some ace XXX, maybe some like king 7, stuff like that. I think bet size here doesn't matter all that much, as long as I bet enough where I can just rip the turn. And I get one call, and then the turn's like the worst card it could be, because 2 reasons. One, somebody could beat me now who wasn't beating me before, and 2, they can also lock me out, right? If this was a queen, jack, or 10, it would be bad because somebody could make a straight and my ace 7 goes down in value. But then if I hit an ace or a 7 or a diamond, those cards are almost definitely going to win. Whereas on this card, I can be drawing dead, which it turns out I am, spoiler alert. And I check, and they bet third pot, and I'm like, oh, it's just third pot. I got so many outs. And I go ahead and call. I think I should probably fold here. But I'm not sure. I didn't have that strong a read on this player, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe my hand's good. Maybe I can get there. Let's see what happens. And then the river gives me the flush. I like my bet here, even though I don't like my turn call. I think if I'm going to make the flush, if I check and then they pot it, they don't pot it. They bet 12 into 39, so they'd be quarter potting it. Because of that, there's so little money left that betting here doesn't expose me to any more risk. I'm not going to check and fold this hand after drawing on the turn. If I was going to check fold, then I just check fold. But I think This way, yeah, if they have a boat, I'm going to get it in against their boat and lose, but I'm going to do that anyway. This way, if they have a hand like trip kings without a boat, or if they somehow made a smaller flush, or they have something else weird, it gives them a chance to pay me off with those. So I'm avoiding the negative free roll, basically. I'm adding more hands to what I think will put the money in here, because I'm already resigned to like, yeah, I'm going to put the money in. And it turns out that they had ace king. Ace, king, queen, 3, pretty nice hand pre-flop. And, they had an ace high suit. We could just quickly launch the equity calculator and kind of take a look at, obviously on the turn, I'm drawing dead. On the river, I'm still dead. On the flop, I was behind, right? I had 43% to 57% basically. And I'm actually curious pre-flop. Is this going to take forever? This might crash it. No? Okay, good. I'm a slight dog pre-flop as well. So, their hand was nice. They played it, I think, well. They could probably just jam the flop, and they could probably 3-bet pre. Those both seem reasonable. But I don't dislike their turn small bet and then river jam. Or not jam. They would have bet. But, just call it off. I think they won the maximum, so hats off to them. All right. We have another ace 10 9 6, and this one is single suited without the redundant flush card. I open it from the hijack. I think we're confident that that's a raise, right? We've seen ace 10 9 6 single suited this is definitely a raise. It's a raise from the low jack even. So the question is, what do we do when 3-bet? Well, if I open the low jack, I'm supposed to fold this. So I'll just go and check MP, ace 10 single suited with a 9 and a 6. Fold out of position, call in position. So ace 10 9 6 single suited to the ace is clear RFI from hijack. But fold to 3-bet, out of position, call 3-bet, in position. So if this had been one of the blinds who 3-bet, I would call. But because it wasn't, I'm going to fold. And that's just the power of position, right? If I'm in position, I get so many better choices post-flop. But here I'm out of position. It would be much harder to play the hand well and extract equity from it. Okay, how many more hands do we have left? Just 3. Okay, let's go. Let's double check whether there's, no more messages. Okay, cool. King, queen. As always, if you have any thoughts or questions about the hands that I'm going over, please let me know. I am streaming on a 3-minute delay, so it will take me a little bit to respond via voice to whatever questions. And if you are watching the YouTube video, just include the timestamp, and I will answer whatever questions you have to the best of my ability. All right. King, queen, 7, 6. I think this is pretty strong. Was this a pre-flop question? I don't even think this is a pre-flop question. Like, this just isn't even close, in my opinion. King, queen, 7, 6. I would be using the hijack range. Yeah, it's a clear open. King, queen, 7, 5 would actually be a fold in the hijack. But 6, 5, 5, 4, 6, 4, those are all plays. So even 7, 5 probably wouldn't be a big mistake. Here on the flop, I bet 60% pot. I think this is sort of texture. We want a slightly larger c-bet size. 3/4 probably would have been fine too, but I'm generally going with like a 60% for my larger sizing. I'm going to do the equity calculator and just take a look at some hands that my opponent might have. Like if we give them jack of hearts, jack of diamonds, ace of spades, 4 of spades, something like this, right? Let's check out our equity. We've got 42% against top set. Right, and they even have a blocker there. If we just give them like, another 4 or something, now we've got 44%. If they have, let's give them a different sort of hand. Let's say queen of spades, 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, 4 of diamonds. This is the nut straight. How are we doing against the nut straight? Now I've got 55% equity against the nut straight with sort of gentle blockers. If I give them another, say, club that's blocking more, we're going to be closer to 50-50. So there's not really anything that I'm afraid of them having here, right? I can either be slightly behind in terms of equity, which is enough equity to get it in, with a 3.5 to 1 stack to pot ratio, right? There's 10 in the middle and there's only 35 in their stack, 34.50. So given that, I'm comfortable getting it in at that level. So, you know, I bet this much. If I had gone closer to pot, then I would arrange it where I can just jam turn. But I think this is fine. There would be like 22 and like 28 left. So I can effectively jam turn if I want. But I can also check back and take a free card. So I think this is pretty clear. Like when you have a monster draw, especially, you know, at a low SPR, at a high SPR, you can start putting chips in. And if we had like a million big blinds, I wouldn't want to get it in against top set, as we've seen. I'm a dog against that hand. Against the nut straight, if I knew that their other two cards were bricks, I would want to get it in. Of course, if they want to get in a million blinds, I have to think they probably have the nuts and like a draw, right? So that would not be a good situation. But with this low SPR, this hand is just fantastic, and it's very easy to get it in. And I'll just say king, queen, 7, 6, double suited is RFI from hijack and call versus 3-bet, right? So in fact, any king, queen, double suited, we RFI from hijack, we always call 3-bet. So that's interesting to know, right? Like anytime we have king, queen, XX that we decide to open from this position or from one position earlier, when somebody 3-bets us, we can defend that hand. We can see a flop with it because we're going to get flops like this one, right? There's so many good flops that are going to be, we can just really be very confident when we put chips in, right, on future streets. So that's a big thing about like putting chips in on one street. We want to think about how likely is it that on future streets we're going to feel good about putting more chips in. If we have a lot of chips left. If we don't have a lot of chips left, that's not as much of a concern, right? But as we get deeper and deeper, we want hands that tilt towards really catching a lot of nice flops that we can have a lot of good turns. Or if we're on the flop, we want there to be a lot of good turns. Or on the turn, we want there to be rivers that we can put money in with, right? When there's money back left to bet. All right, this hand is already stressing me out looking at it as I remember what happened. It's a little bit of immediate sort of, not to trivialize PTSD, but, you know, post-stressful stress thing, whatever. But yeah, so the hijack opens. I flat with this. Let's check this out first, right? This is a spot where we can get some, you know, binary feedback. Is this a hand to flat against the hijack open? So we'll look up button versus MP, which is hijack, and we'll look in single suited 10-10. And the answer is going to be, interesting. It wants to 3-bet this, 3-bet fold. So that would have gone differently, this hand. But ace jack 10-10 single suited is 3-bet fold from button versus hijack. But one of very few 3-bet folds in ace jack, in 10-10 XX single suited. So call seems good or okay, as surrounding hands also flat, right? I'm looking at this and there's just tons of 10-10 XX double suit, single suited that's going to flatten this situation. The only ones that are 3-betting are ace jack, and then ace 9, ace 8, and ace 7 with the good suit. But this one with the bad suit, if I were suited to the ace, I flat, and suited to the jack, I 3-bet. But I think this is fine. I'm not. That's the sort of thing where like the solver gives you this very specific output that might be a little hard to internalize as like this is exactly this. But you know, we don't want to get too hung up in that. We want to remember like, okay, 10-10. In fact, I'm going to write this down. 10-10 with good side cards is mostly flat on button versus hijack RFI, right? So that's kind of the heuristic, which is, it's a little bit inaccurate, right? It's an oversimplification, but it's an oversimplification to something that is doable, right? Like seeing this hand and being like, yeah, that maybe sometimes I 3-bet fold a hand like this, but mostly this type of hand I'm going to flat. So I'm fine flatting this, right? We don't have to have perfect accuracy. All right, here they bet out full pot. So what does this suggest to me? Well, ace-ace, certainly a possibility. They raise pre-flop, and now they want to pot it. So that's possible. If they have ace-ace, I feel like they'd be less likely to have like a nut flush draw with it, specifically because that would have very robust equity, and maybe you don't need to try to put all the money in at once. 5-5, 4-4, also possible. Deuce tray, possible, but they raised from the hijack, so like not super likely, right? 2s and 3s are fairly poor cards. I don't think either of us are big threats to have the deuce and the 3. And then they can also have, you know, maybe some rundowns like 6, 7, 8 with diamonds. They can have some king high diamonds, maybe like ace, king, 10, whatever. So they're going to have some hands that are very strong against me, but I do have top pair. If I hit a 10, there's a reasonable chance that that set will be good, and I have diamonds. So, and I have position, right? The key here is position. Out of position, I think I probably just fold this. I decided to call. Against the pot size bet, maybe you can argue a fold, I'm not sure, but I decide to call. I think it's reasonable. The turn's a jack, and now they check. So, okay, I have an ace, I have a jack, that gives me top 2 pair. It also reduces the number of combos of ace-ace or jack-jack they can have. So when they check, I think my hand is quite strong. I also have, you know, the diamonds as a backdoor kind of emergency thing if I'm behind. The thing I didn't really think about is if they do have a hand that beats me, they're probably going to check raise all in, and that's going to be a very uncomfortable spot. And that's exactly what happened. They check raised all in, and I spent a good amount of time. I spent most of my time bank trying to decide what to do with this hand, and I'm still not totally certain. I think what I want to do is I want to launch the equity calculator and kind of see how am I doing against different hands. Basically, I need 33% equity here, right? Because they've essentially check raised a pot size bet. There's like 69 in the middle, and I've got 65 in stack. So maybe I only need, well, after the rake, I'm going to need about 33% equity. So instead of giving them a random hand, that's not going to really tell me anything. I want to give them ace of clubs, ace of spades, and then just like a couple of random cards, like a 6 of spades and a 9 of hearts, something like that. And let's see how much equity I have. I need to hit the flush. The fact that I have the jack of suit, that this is going to give me 8 out, so I think I only have 20% equity here. Yeah, so I have 20% equity. That's not great, right? I'm not thrilled about having 20% when I need a lot more than that. If we give them instead a hand like 2 of hearts, 3 of hearts, 6 of clubs, 7 of spades, now I'm going to have a lot more equity because I'm going to have all 9 diamonds, and I'm going to have 4 board pairing cards, right? That are going to give me the boat, or the ace and the jack. So what did I say? 9 and 4, 13. I think I'm going to have 32.5% equity. Yeah, so they're 32. It's just 2.5% times your number of outs. So when we know our opponent's hand exactly, the thing is, anything that beats me, now I'm in, not doing so hot. So let's give them one more hand. Ace of spades, king, like 32.5 isn't enough. That's what I mean by not so hot, right? That can be kind of vague, but it's that the idea is like, it's not enough. It's not good enough, right? If I'm behind and I don't have good enough odds to draw. If they had a smaller stack, I would call it off, right? But now let's look at what happens when I'm ahead, when I have top 2 pair, but they have the Broadway wrap and the nut flush draw to go with it. And now I have 65% equity. So when I am ahead, I'm doing quite well, but they still have substantial equity. Let's see if we can make this a little bit worse, maybe. Give them like 6, 7, and like 8. And something like that. Now I've got 72% equity. I've actually made their hand a little bit worse. So this comes down to how often am I ahead? Because if I'm behind, I do not have odds to draw. So the only reason I should consider calling this is given the chance that I might actually have the best hand right now. At the time, I felt like I probably didn't have the best hand very often at all. But I could be wrong. I've marked this hand to review tomorrow afternoon to look at what did they actually have. That's not going to tell me what I should have done in this situation. But what it will tell me is if they have some kind of drawing hand, some kind of really wacky, just garbage hand, like ace 5, 6, 8 or something. If they have something like that, then I'll know, okay, I need to remember that hands like that are possible against erratic players. And I know that they're possible, but the more often I see that happen, the more likely I should consider it. Whereas if every time I mark a hand where I make like a tight fold or what feels like a big fold, they just always have it when I review my hands, then I can go like, okay, my sense for folding these spots is pretty on, and I should continue making those folds. So that's a nice thing about Ignition is like we don't get definitive answers about this opponent necessarily that we can take forward, but we do get a sense of like, are my big folds working out, or am I giving up way too much with them? So I think that's very powerful, and I want to make the most out of it. And I believe I have one more hand. Oh, you know what? I'm going to actually, there are post flop, right? Ace 10 Jack has 20% equity versus, what was it? Top set, 32.5% versus the wheel, and like 65% plus against hands it's beating. So those are kind of, that's information. Those are facts. I'll say without versus the bear wheel, I guess, versus top set, no blockers, right? So that I know, it can be worse, right? They can have blockers to go with the hand that beats me, right? If they also have weak diamonds, I can have 0% equity if they have the nut diamonds, right? If they have ace, king of diamonds, 4 of diamonds, then I'm just drawing dead. It's over. It's over on the turn. So that's a thing to remember. But yeah, so that's I think what we had to extract from that hand. Here's the last one, 4, 4, 5, 3. There's a raise, and I decide to fold. I think this is a clear fold, but I wanted to double check it and make sure that my sense of this isn't off. Kind of just refining this. Okay, big blind versus button. It might be close-ish, as the cards are very connected, and it's a fold, but it's close-ish. And here's how I'll get this open, and I'll say the sentence as I'm writing it. 4, 4, 5, 3, single suited is fold. Big blind versus button, but 4, 4, 5, 6 single suited is call versus button RFI. Right, so basically I needed slightly better cards, right? The 3 is very bad. Make the 3 a 6, I can call this hand. And so also like 4, 4, 3, 3 and 4, 4, deuce, deuce, deuce are calls single suited in this spot. And otherwise, we basically need a suited ace or ace king, ace queen, king queen to go with our 4, 4. Okay, and this is all single suited. We'll do that. Right, so I think that's clear. I think that's just a little bit like just rounding off the circle, right? Just refining it, sanding down the edges. I feel good about post-flop today. Pre-flop. Like there were a lot of spots that I thought were fairly close. I feel like mostly identified them correctly. We did some work reviewing those, and I think there's progress there. I think that'll be continual progress, and I'm happy with the method of. It's kind of like a Monte Carlo method of improving, right? It's just like looking at spot, looking at spot, looking at spot, instead of being like, let me memorize this chart. No, it's like having an experience with the hand and then remembering, oh, what was I supposed to do there? Yeah, okay, I was supposed to do this. And like the act of typing it, like writing it by hand would be even better in terms of forming the memories, forming the connections. But that would be even slower, and my hand would cramp up if I wrote this many notes. So that's that's not what I'm gonna do. But it's I think this is, so far I'm happy with this method. As always, please let me know in the comments on YouTube, in the chat on Twitch, what you think of this approach. Hopefully it's been educational and perhaps a little entertaining, seeing me lose a bunch of stacks today. In terms of post flop, I don't really feel bad. I mean, I reviewed the post flop things. There's a few spots. The ace jack, maybe I could check that back. And then the one where they hit the king on the turn and made a boat, I can maybe just check fold that turn. But overall, the ones where I got the chips in, I feel like I was supposed to get the chips in, and I'm supposed to win around half the time, and I'm supposed to lose around half the time, and I lost both. That's going to happen. If 2 coin flips, you're going to lose both coin flips a quarter of the time. You're going to split them half the time, and you're going to win both a quarter of the time. And that's just how it is, right? And, in PLO, we kind of like get to be the house, like a casino, and we invite, weaker players to come gamble with us with bad odds. That's kind of the strategy, right? That's the angle, is trying to find spots where we give someone a chance to gamble with bad odds. And, also we try to defend our equity and get them to fold too much of their own equity. And I think when we understand that and we realize, like, yeah, there's going to be some, there's going to be some losing times. There's going to be some winning times. And overall, the wins should hopefully be a little bit bigger than the losses, and we end up with good results. I remember the casino near me, this woman was running up. She came in with like $600. And she ran it up to like $300,000. And they were all freaking out. And they're like, oh, we got to get her a room. We got to get her to stay. She's got to lose. Like, what's going on? Like, oh no, we're losing. It's like, that's supposed to happen. Sometimes someone's supposed to go on an epic run. And she lost some back, and then she cashed out still for 6 figures. But like, that's good if you're the casino. You need people to go on those runs, because that, first of all, that person is going to maybe think they're invincible, and they might end up losing a lot of it back. But also, they're going to tell stories. Like, people around them are going to get inspired and be like, oh, I could win, $300,000 from my 600. And most of the time they're going to lose it because you're the casino and you give them bad odds. And that's how it works. But like, sometimes you're going to take one on the chin, and it's fine, right? And then we assess, like, okay, did I get it in good? If so, cool, no problem. If not, cool, let's learn something from it, right? And we move on. So another day, another session in the books. Thank you so much for watching, sticking with it to the bitter end. About 50% session review today, 50% play session. As always, let me know how that ratio, all the different things kind of affect your enjoyment of the stream. And same time tomorrow, I'll be back here on YouTube. Like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. And thank you so much. Cheers. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.